This thing is scary, but the reasons it's come to Earth might not be as bad as we think. I've had many debates with Venom fans about how those movies are and what that character is. Unfortunately, there are a lot of fans of these movies, and every time we have these debates, of which I need to be prepared by taking Xanax pills, I always mention to them, you idiots, if you really want a good film about an alien symbiote coming down to Earth and latching onto a human, Venom is not the best bet you have. Instead, you should watch this film. There's a little movie that Russia made called SPUTNIK. And SPUTNIK is about an alien, seemingly an alien parasite that comes and attacks a bunch of astronauts that serve the USSR, and it latches onto one. Soviets take this human down for experimentation to see what's wrong with them. And what they find is not a parasitic alien at all. In fact, it's quite a symbiotic one. Now, I like to compare these two things. I like to compare this to Venom, all right? Venom, I can't stand these films. Everyone knows that. The first one is okay. It's whatever. It's watchable. The next two, they belong in a dumpster fire. However, let's compare these symbiotes, shall we? The Venom symbiote latches on to Eddie, and it is a very symbiotic relationship. It gives him a lot of strength. It talks to him like it's a friend of his. At first you feel like it's just using him, right? But then it becomes his friend. It gets to know Eddie. It gets to love Eddie. It gives Eddie powers. It gives him a hard exterior that he can fight with and manipulate as a weapon. It likes to eat people, wants people's brains. And him and Eddie have to make a deal. Okay, you'll only go after the bad guys that we confront, and you're allowed to eat them, but no one else. So they have a deal, and it's friendly. Venom's cracking jokes out here, fucking with Eddie, playing with him. He even dumps Eddie to go and latch onto other people and start drinking and partying at a club. This is clearly not a serious film. Obviously, it's a comic book film, but also, it's just a fucking comedy that's not funny. However, this is obviously not trying to be a realistic symbiote film, but if you want a symbiote film that hits hard, it's this thing. This thing right here, he ain't latching onto your skin and creating a suit for you. No, he goes inside of you via your mouth and just festers in there. He does this and sleeps in you, in your esophagus, in here. He just lays in here, and he can do it without fucking up your internal organs. That's the craziest thing. He can slime his way in there and slime his way out. So he goes inside you, and when he's inside you, everything's cool. In fact, the host feels more energized, better mood, has more life to him. His physical attributes increase by a bit. He doesn't become a superhuman or anything like that, but he physically is much better than he was before, both on a physical and mental level. However, when the creature comes out, the host is like, the creature waits for the host to be asleep. And then when the creature comes out, the host is kind of at its mercy. And the creature comes out to go and eat people. The creature likes eating people as well, just like Venom. And it eats people viciously. It bites onto them, it just feasts on them. It chose between two astronauts when it found them in space, in their ship. One astronaut had cancer that the Soviets couldn't detect before sending the astronaut out there. So this creature saw that and detected early cancer and went into the other host. Establish an emotional connection between it and the host. So the host is able to affect this creature when the creature's outside of him. The creature can see the host's memories and the host can kind of control him in that way. Very, very interesting. And when this thing wants to kill people, it kills them in droves. This is one of the most efficient killers of all time. The way it dispatches a bunch of soldiers in this film. They shoot at him and they can't even kill him. This guy, he's not bulletproof, but he's able to tank bullets and just come at people and decapitate them. Probably the most important aspect of this creature. It goes inside you because it needs to feast on the fear chemical cortisol. When you're scared shitless, the brain releases cortisol. That's what this creature goes inside your body and lays dormant and sucks on all the nutrition it gets from the cortisol caused by the fear it causes within humans. That is the primary reason it likes to jump into certain hosts. One, it sees their living capability. So if they got cancer or some kind of death illness, it won't go into you. But if it strikes enough fear in you, it's like a bath It's like a shower for this creature. This creature needs that kind of nutrition. So it eats people, but it also feasts on cortisol by going inside you. And when it's inside you, it makes you more alive. I think it releases its own chemicals that makes humans better physically. So it is a symbiotic relationship. And when it's outside of you, the human is like in like a seizure phase, but the human can also control the creature and pass along memories, and there's an emotional connection, so the creature won't fuck with the humans that the host doesn't want it to fuck with. So there's also that. Now, where did this thing come from? It's really hard to determine where this thing comes from because it makes no sense. It approaches our astronauts when they're in the shape. It approaches them from outside, from space, and finds its way inside and goes into them, and then, you know, finds its way into one to use it as a host, right? So it was in space. So it was floating around in space and then latched itself on the ship and then found the human. There was no spaceship there. We didn't, at least not that we saw. There was no spaceship that the humans detected either. It just found its way to their ship. So the only observations we can get from that is this thing has been floating in space, trying to find some hosts. How long it's been floating in space? Was it just floating in space for that? Which planet did it come from? How did it get out from that planet and go to other planets and survive entry into the atmosphere? How the fuck did it all happen? I don't know. I do think there was probably some kind of transport or carrier for it. I don't know what happened to it. Whatever planet it came from, it needed to be a planet with an atmosphere that can support terrestrial life that it could feast on, but it also could find hosts for. That's the thing. And this creature, the way it behaves among humans, and the way it finds its host, the way it knows that humans would be a good host, it makes me think, has it interacted with humans before? Well, there's a chance that this movie takes place in 1980, so there's a chance that when we did the moonwalk, we might have come across this creature then, and it interacted with us then. Maybe it found its way into Armstrong or one of the astronauts. And remember, when it goes inside you, humans are not entirely aware of what's happening to them when the creature's in them because it's seamless. When it's inside a host, the host can't even feel it, right? So it's possible it could have been inside one person, but we would have found out if astronauts died on the moon. There is a whole thing about the missing tapes about Apollo 11 that people think that the U.S. government's keeping behind wraps because maybe they found alien life on there or some shit, whatever. Maybe this is where we can incorporate that into the story. Maybe it did come across the U.S. astronauts before, and because of that, it saw that, okay, there are more astronauts coming out of Earth. I can find my way into these human hosts and get to Earth where there's a whole bunch of fucking nutrition and food for me to eat. But here's the thing. After the moonwalk, the Soviets probably saw that, and the Soviets and the US were competing on a technological level, nuclear arms race, then space exploration. So the Soviets were probably trying to increase, their space armada as well. And it gave Sputnik, the alien, the perfect opportunity to find a host. Now, before finding its way through space to Earth, it couldn't have just been starving that entire time. It needed to have a host, first of all, that it could get nutrition from so that it could be strong enough to find its way to Earth and latch onto a ship, break into the ship and find a human host. It needs to be strong enough to do all that, to withstand all that. So it needed to have a host and food before that. So where the hell did it come from? I don't know. Maybe it was hopping from planet to planet doing this. I don't know how the fuck it got into these planets. I don't know how that all works. That is something that the writers themselves haven't even figured out. We're not seeing this alien how it was when it first was born, right? And it first started hunting. Every time it latches onto a host, it retains a connection with them, their memories, all that kind of stuff. So maybe its behavior is influenced throughout time for each host it invades. So the Sputnik alien we see in this movie might be more animalistic in nature because it's only ever dealt with certain kind of animals that are like him with certain memories and instincts. So it's possible that if it starts invading more and more intelligent species' bodies, that it could retain some kind of mental capacity from each of them and become a higher life form. Maybe we haven't even seen this dude evolve truly. Maybe it evolves with how much it adopts from its hosts. Now, I made a video about Calvin, the alien from life, that fucking creature that kills everybody it comes across with, right? And people were like, hey, if you want an alien that can beat that, you should watch Sputnik. Sputnik might be related to Calvin. First of all, Sputnik is not beating Calvin, all right? First of all, it would be a battle to see who's more durable. Both of these are very durable creatures. Calvin adapts to anything very instantly. He did that with fire. Sputnik, he was able to take gunfire, but I don't necessarily know if he's as durable as Calvin. He's shown to be weak physical, and he's susceptible to dying because if his host dies, he dies. There's a link there. So Calvin will probably kill him and use his tentacles to rip him in half, in my opinion. That's what would happen. Calvin don't play no games. But I don't think they're related at all. I think they're counterpoints to each other. They're like the antithesis of each other. Here's what I mean. Calvin is a consumer, a devourer of worlds, essentially. He starts off in a freaking petri dish, like a little sperm cell, and then he gets zapped and then starts killing everybody. That's probably how he started off in Mars too, where he just dominated all the life until there was nothing left, and then he went to hibernation again. And then the cycle repeats itself each new environment he finds himself into. Whereas this guy, he eats people, he does consume, but he does it, he's a predator, of course, he eats, but he needs the exact kind of things he's hunting. He goes inside of them and he uses them as a host, feasts on their cortisol, but also establishes emotional connection with them, right? Calvin doesn't care about emotional connection. He's a terrorist. He'll destroy everyone. These two evolved in separate directions. Calvin evolved to destroy all life around him, eat, hibernate, and just wait until he gets triggered again and there's new life. Our boy here evolved to adapt to his environment by finding hosts. He eats people, but he has to find hosts, right? There's a balance there, and it's a symbiotic relationship, whereas Calvin is a terrorist relationship. I think Calvin goes from planet to planet to planet, consuming all life. This dude finds the best host. That's what it's all about, all right? And a lot of his hosts before, coming to Earth and finding our Russian astronauts, they probably weren't cutting it for him. Maybe the hosts that he had before were dying, or they just weren't enough, and the mental connection he had with them was destroying Sputnik from the inside out. He's looking for the perfect host, whereas this guy just wants to kill everybody. They're not related, but maybe they've met. This is my headcanon, all right? This is something that the Russian writers didn't even think of. Throughout space-time, thousands of years, it's possible that these aliens came into contact with each other at some point, all right? They probably evolved in the same environments. Calvin evolved to kill and eat, right? So he probably had to be surrounded by terrestrial life with an atmosphere that can support that. Same thing with Sputnik. Probably not the same planets, I'd say, but at some point they came across each other, and I think Calvin either came directly into contact with Sputnik's kind and killed them, or he devoured so much life that Sputnik's kind didn't have hosts to go inside of to feast on cortisol. Calvin is nice because he can supply Sputnik's race with a lot of cortisol because he strikes fear into everybody. But the problem is everyone's dead when Calvin's there. Calvin just kills everybody. So Sputnik has no hosts. They fundamentally conflict with each other. So Calvin probably was moving from planet to planet to planet. I don't know how he did this, but somehow he did. I don't think he originated on Mars. I think he moved from planet to planet to planet, and Sputnik probably followed him to try to figure out what the fuck is going on, or maybe he followed Sputnik. Maybe this guy was following Sputnik's race from planet to planet to planet, and then he found himself on Mars. And in Mars, after killing all the life, he had no more food, and the atmosphere changed. So he hibernated. That's the cycle of Calvin. So he hibernated, and Sputnik probably followed and watched over to make sure no one fucks with Calvin and wakes him up, because that's a ticking time bomb. Sputnik knows if Calvin's awake, all the potential hosts that Sputnik has are gone. So that would destroy Sputnik's life cycle. So he probably saw that the Russians were getting really close, right, with their space exploration to a planet like Mars, where eventually they could come into contact with Calvin, and the cycle that Sputnik has seen all his life will repeat itself. Calvin destroys everything, leaving nothing for Sputnik. So Sputnik probably had to find the nearest host. Maybe he was trying to stop the humans from doing all the space exploration shit so they don't wake up Calvin. But unfortunately, at the end of Sputnik dies. The host shoots himself, and Sputnik dies because the connection between the hosts is prominent for Sputnik's life cycle. And decades later, the US achieved space travel, maybe faster than the USSR did, and got to Mars first, and they found this motherfucker. And now Earth is screwed. So basically Sputnik would be acting like the wolf predator from AVPR, and Calvin's basically like the Perdelian, this infesting fucking abomination. Like, Sputnik is more like a serial killer who's trying to protect the greater good. He's like Dexter. Calvin is like Al-Qaeda, all wrapped up in one. They're blowing up as many things as they can, except there is no reason for them to do it. They're just doing it, right? That's it. The greater of two evils type of thing, you know? So that's why That's what I think is the going on over here, all right? That's how I would connect it to. I think it's pretty plausible. They look the most alike in terms of aliens that are connected to each other, right? And if you want to know who the grossest alien of all time is, especially in the Alien Predator franchise, watch this video here. Ladies and gentlemen, we are on a mission to take over Hollywood. If you want to suggest video topics to me, and discuss your favorite movies and your favorite film theories with like-minded fans in a community geared towards changing storytelling itself. Join my free Discord right now. The link is in the description and probably in the comment section too. Join it. We're changing the game one Coke line at a time. See you on the other side.